Everyone wants infinite scrap in Astroneer, but how do you get it? The truth is there's more ways than just one. Some are quick and simple for beginners, some are more advanced, and others are only for the late game players. But let's start with the beginning. So first you need to understand how scrap is made and what it's used for. You get it from a large shredder by shredding items, and you can use it in the trade platforms in exchange for resources. Now I've got a lot of stuff prepared here and on other planets, so we are gonna go through all of the ways you can get it. But as you start off, you're just gonna find things out in the wild. Some of them will already be debris, but you can also blow things up. If you're really early game, I don't think you're gonna have dynamite, but just for the purpose of demonstration here, I'm gonna set some up on this, and we can blow it up. This is always fun. So there we go, now we should have some scrappable items. So you can collect this small debris and it will gather up into debris bundles, and then the bigger stuff will fly everywhere, obviously. Well, this medium printer survived, but depending on the size of shredder you've got, we've got some bigger ones over there, but there are also smaller ones. You will be able to shred different categories of items, but let's start with the debris. This is what you'll probably have. So you just throw it into the shredder and that's gonna make scrap for you. You can see the scrap forming right here. And that's your scrap right there. You can now take it and trade it for other resources. But you want more than that, that's why you're watching this video. So you want to get more scrap faster and by doing less work. So here's the first strategy, Glowsticks. First of all, you're gonna need some plants and some tappers. You don't need a special tappable plants, you can have any plants in the game and they will still work. And for the tapper, you're just gonna need aluminum, so you can get this early game. You just set the tapper on there and that's gonna produce organic. Now I've got more of these here because you'll probably want to make this a little bit faster. This method is the most infinite one of them all, if I can call it that. This provides actual infinite scrap that will never run out, but it's not automated. We'll talk about all of the automated farms in just a minute, but right now this is the most infinite variant and you can do it very early game. I think in the first hour of starting up Astroneer you can get this, and that's gonna allow you to get a lot of scrap. But as the organic is done, you will be able to grab it from the tapper, just like that, and now you can use it to create glow sticks. These are easy to craft, so you just need organic. You can use them if you want to, and they can illuminate caves and stuff, but they're not really that good. So I think the only reason why you would want these is to shred them. You're gonna need more than just one to get a scrap, but it's okay because you can have multiple of these and it's pretty easy. The reason I like this is because it's also scalable. So you can just plant these, and if you gather more seeds, you can have more trees. And as I said, you can do this with any plant. So whatever you put down, you're gonna be able to place a tapper on it. You're just gonna need to wait for it to grow, but this doesn't really take a lot. So that's the strategy. You just go around collecting all of the organic, you craft it into glow sticks. By the time you're done shredding them, you should have another set of organic ready to go. Of course, you can also use the soil centrifuge to get the organic and do that, but if you're using a soil centrifuge already, then there's a way better strategy of getting scrap out of it. So let's talk about that. As you can see, it is a little bit more advanced. You're gonna need some auto arms, but you can also do this manually if you want to. You can start this early game because look at all the materials that you need. Except for the auto arm, there's not really a lot of advanced things in here. So what you're gonna want to do is have some soil, have a soil centrifuge, and set it to resin on repeat. Then you're gonna have an auto arm taking that resin and placing it on a platform with small printers. You don't need two of them, you can use just one, whatever you want, and you will set the small printer on repeat to craft small canisters. Then you're gonna have another auto arm grabbing them and feeding them into the shredder, and that's how you get a lot of scrap. Of course, this isn't fully automated because you still have to gather the soil, but it's a lot more automated than the first one. At first, you're probably just gonna have a couple of these in your backpack and you can go around the world just digging up some soil. This soil is pretty hard, let's just ignore hardness, and there we go. You can just gather up the soil and then go back to your soil centrifuge, place it in there. That's why you don't even need these medium fluid canisters. These are a little bit more expensive, but the good news is you can start this off with just a soil centrifuge and a shredder, and you don't need anything in the middle except the small printer. You can do this manually at first, and then it's easy to just upgrade it without using a lot of resources. And as you can see, we are getting scrap right here, and it's getting placed in the medium resource canister. Of course, you don't need this either, you could just have a normal medium storage on there. And because this is set to repeat, it already started producing the second batch of resin. Right now, if you just have another thing to do on the planet, you can just leave it be, and by the time you'll be back in your base, you'll have a full one of these. This is a pretty easy concept, it's easy to use, especially early game, and because you can keep upgrading it, this can carry you all the way into the end game. For example, you can use multiple soil centrifuges if you have all the soil, and by the time you have a rover and a drill and paver, you can gather soil more effectively and get a lot lot more scrap that way. Now this is pretty cool, but you still have to gather the soil yourself. If you want to go a step up, then you can get scrap out of metals. You can use certain metals to get you infinite scrap. You can use aluminum, copper, tungsten, and it might also work with some other materials, but these are the ones I've actually tried. Now really quick, if you want to use aluminum, you're gonna make it into rails and then into scrap. If you're using copper, you'll create work lights and then shred those into scrap. And if you want to use tungsten, that's gonna go into floodlights and then into scrap. It sounds pretty easy, but let me show you how it actually works. So for this, you're gonna need some more advanced materials. First, the most important one is the auto extractor. You don't need two of them. You can do fine with just one, but you will need some trains. I'm also using the rail station because I have it set up on load stopped cars, and the one above is set to unload stopped cars, this being the car. We'll talk about this sensor setup in just a minute, but what you need to know is that this will sometimes be actually infinite and sometimes it won't. I don't know if this is a bug or a feature, but when the node gets depleted, sometimes you can just do this and it's back up again. You can start gathering all of the resources that you need. So just like that, you can just move it just an inch and it will start working again. That's why in past videos I said this is infinite scrap, and some people said, well, it's not actually infinite because the node gets depleted. It doesn't always get depleted. You just have to move these around and you actually get infinite scrap. Now this is for aluminum, so we are gathering laterite on here and it goes into the train station, which then puts it onto the car. Why I like to use this is once the car is up there, if you don't have these storages, this will all just stop because it doesn't have any place to put the laterite. But if you have this, it will all go much faster. So this is just for optimizing your scrap farm. Now this automatically loads the car, as you can see right there, and once it's full, it will get activated and go to the top. And I'm doing that with a storage sensor and a proximity repeater. Apparently you don't need the proximity repeater. It's alright if you just take the storage sensor and link it to the car. So I can actually just do that right here to show you. That's how it works. This just adds a little bit of lag, so I don't know why I was using that, but whatever. This storage sensor is set to full or empty. This is very important because it won't work right if you set it on anything else. So once this is full, the storage sensor will activate and it will go to the other end of the line, which is in my base on top. Once it gets empty, it will activate again and it will come back to this end of the line to gather more laterite. Now this just has a couple more until it's filled up, so I'll go up in the base and wait for it there. Before it gets here, you should know that this rail station is set to unload stopped cars. So once the car is here, it will unload onto this, and then these auto arms will take the laterite and get it smelted over here. You don't have to use the portable smelting furnaces if you don't have them, just a normal smelter will do. And then we've got some auto arms grabbing the aluminum from here and putting it onto the next platform, where I've got a small printer that's creating rail junction bundles. You'll need 2 aluminum for each rail junction bundle, but these give you a lot more scrap. I just have a thing here in case it gets backed up, but you don't need this platform in the middle. You can just have them on the ground and then it will take them. But here's the car, so you can see it unload right here, and there we go. Now this is just unloading it 2 at a time, and you will see once it's completely empty, it will go to the other end to collect more laterite, just like that. So this is actually fully automated. You don't have to do anything else except sometimes fiddle with those auto extractors if they get depleted. But as the aluminum gets smelted here, we'll see these auto arms in action. There it goes. It will place them right here and they will be made into a rail junction, which then gets shredded into scrap, and you can see how much scrap I've collected already. Now this is actually fully automated. You don't have to do anything here, and this will just keep going as long as you've got resources coming in. Nobody's stopping you to add more auto extractors, and you can also have the rail go to multiple resource nodes, so you can just make this a lot faster. And you can also scale this up if you want. You can have multiple shredders or stuff like that. And that's what I was telling you about the first one, the soil scrap farm, and you can see how I scaled it up right here. I've got 3 soil centrifuges, I've got a lot more soil on here, and I've got multiple auto arms and multiple small printers that all feed into the large shredder. So this is the basic one that I showed you earlier with the resin, but it's on a much larger scale. On top of that, you can also have an automated trade platform, which I'm not gonna get into in this video, but if you want to check out how to build one of these, I've got a perfect video for you linked in the top right corner. So go check that out after finishing this video, because we've got a lot more interesting things to talk about. For example, the big farm that's up on that mountain. But before we get there, let me show you how a copper farm actually looks. Oh, I think I used this in a video where I blew everything up. Yeah, that's right. I just kind of forgot about it. But I had a really big base here with a lot of things. I just need to load another duplicate of the save. And I built everything in survival mode. I'm just in creative to film this video. But it looks like I had another scrap farm up here as well, but this got blown up as well. So let me just get another save so I can actually show you. This is an actual save where nothing is destroyed, and I actually have a tungsten farm right here. What's going on in here? Oh, this is just a resin farm feeding into some trade platforms that then create, with the graphite from here, they create some diamonds. I did that at some point. I have no clue why I did that, because you would never need that many diamonds. But whatever, here's the tungsten farm. So it's the same setup. This rail just goes onto those 2 auto extractors that get wolframite. Then that gets melted into tungsten, which then gets made into floodlights right here. And you can easily just scrap those. I've got so much scrap that this actually got backed up and can't produce anymore. That's how you know you've got a good scrap farm. But let's just go ahead and repair these just like that, just placing them back and maybe screwing it up a bit. But there it is, it's just that easy. So if you wanted to say in the comments it's not actually infinite, it is. I just proved it. And I've had this farm going for more than a year at this point, and that node is still not depleted. So yes, this is actually infinite scrap. But I just wanted to show you that you can do this with multiple metals depending on what planet you're on. For example, this is on Calidor, but the aluminum one I had on Glacio. And speaking of Glacio, I have another really interesting farm there, so let's go back. And this is the one on top of the mountain I was talking about. I also used this for some events, that's why all this stuff is here. And by the way, you can use all of these farms for the Exokeers event, which comes each year in the spring, and you can get a lot of items, as you can see right here. But that's not what we're talking about in this video. This is about scrap farms. So this one is the most advanced and most effective scrap farm out there. And this works pretty similar with the metal ones. You've got a rail, you've got this thing, the auto arms unloading it. The only difference is you're gonna have to place the auto extractors on some Astronium nodes. That's where it gets a little bit harder, because you're gonna have to go all the way into the core of the planet to do that. And then you've got one extra step. You will need to automate trading. You can use Astronium to trade for solid fuel jump jets, and one Astronium is 2 jump jets. That's gonna make you a lot of scrap. And then you just use the jump jets to scrap them right here, and then you can store the scrap or use it for whatever event you're doing or anything else that you want. So there's 2 hard things here. The first one is getting the auto extractors on some Astronium. For that you're gonna need to be a little bit late game. And then the second thing is you're gonna need to automate trading. As I've said, I've got a video on that. I showed it to you earlier, but this is not that hard anyway. You just need a couple materials and some platforms, and you just need to know how to set these lines up. And if you want to do this, you'll just have to have a rail that goes all the way into the core, like this one right here, which actually has a few things going off of it. That was for another event last year. But you'll just need to go into the core. As you can see, the first time I came here, I used the rover with the drill and paver. That makes it a lot easier. And then it took me less than 10 minutes to get all the rail lines. And this is also very scalable, because you can use multiple auto extractors on multiple Astronium nodes. Again, you can just move them a bit and they will start working again. And I have 2 of them on that node up there, but then I have another 2 on this one here. And then, as if that wasn't enough, I've got some more all the way on this side, which are actually already working. So this one is my most effective farm, because it's got 6 auto extractors working on it. This rail car works exactly the same like the metal ones. Once it's full, it will go up to the surface. The road there takes a little bit more, because we are all the way into the core of the planet. But other than that, it's really fast and really easy. I mean, I wouldn't say easy, you need to be late game for this, but it is simple if you understood the concepts and you know how to build the automated trade platform. Now I really encourage you to watch that video on how to automate your trade platform and get the most effective scrap farm out there. It's right here on screen, so go watch that next, and I'll see you next time. Cheers, Astroneers!